All right, we're live, Shy. All right, everybody. I think we're live. I apologize for the technical difficulties. So, welcome everyone. This is our first little Pinnacle Appliance Support podcast. This is called Peak Performance, brought to you by Pinnacle Appliance Support. My name is Mike Langen. I've been with Pinnacle for a few years now, and I've got my guy Shiloh in the back here helping me with the computers. You'll probably see him in a few. Say hey, Shiloh.
Hey guys.
All right, so today we're going to talk about Fulgor, Milano, and Fiaba ice makers. So there's quite a few things and questions about these ice makers and why they do what they do, some of the errors and some of the concerns. So I figured we'll talk about some of those things today. Hopefully we get some live interaction from you guys, but we'll go over some 8 no water in error codes, some no ice, no errors, to where you're not making any ice, but the machine is not erroring out, letting you know that there's a problem. Also, we'll go over pressurizing the water system, if it's a fresh install or if you just replace the water filter. We're going to check out the sensor readout so you can see the real-time sensor reading of the ice maker and all the other NTC probes inside the machine. We're going to walk through a quick little service mode and how to enter service mode so you can assist diagging machines. Then we're going to walk through a technical service bulletin that was released previously, probably about a month ago, about changing the location of the sensor, the placement of the sensor on the evaporator, and a new updated sensor. So with those few things, that's going to help out with the ice production or cause ice production issues in the future. And then if we have time, we'll get into removing the ice maker and some how-tos on that. So first off, kind of want to get into the 8 no water in. So 8 no water in is an error code that the machine will receive if it's attempted to fill with water 10 times and has not changed temperature on the temperature sensor. So here's one of our ice makers. On the bottom of the ice maker, you have an NTC probe. If this probe does not change in temperature when the ice maker fills with water after 10 attempts, it is going to error out 8 no water in. That doesn't necessarily mean we don't have water to the machine. It could be a bad sensor, and the sensor's not reading that it did fill with water or change in temperature, but that's the only reason that we're going to get 8 no water in. So at that point, you can do a few different things. You can go into the settings, and run a manual clean cycle. You can check the function of the ice maker. You can check the pressure of the water, make sure that it's going to fill. And then you can do a few other things if those don't work out, but it'll at least lead you in the correct direction to go and diagnose your problems. And then we'll check into your sensor readout because the actual temperature sensor needs to be negative 14 degrees to even think about harvesting for ice. So to kind of hit back on the TSB we talked about with the sensor change in location and causing frost buildup and airflow change, the unit's not going to be as cold as it needs to be inside that freezer, and there's a good chance that if the ice maker needs to be at negative 14 to produce ice, and the fridge is at negative 10, the ice maker is not going to produce ice. So now we can review that TSB in a little while, and we'll talk about that and how that can affect ice production. Pressurizing the system. So whenever you guys have a brand new install or you replace a water filter, you need to pressurize the system. The first 2 times or a few times the unit goes to fill with ice or fill with water to make ice, it's just going to be pressurizing the system. And if it goes 10 times, guess what it's going to do? You're going to get an 8 no water in. And then once the 8 no water in pops on the display, then everybody thinks that there's an actual failure. We don't have water, and then we're replacing water valves and ice makers and boards. But there's an effective way to diagnose these and determine which exactly one is the failure. Along with pressurizing the system, you go into manual clean and you actually hit the start button. It'll rotate the ice maker. The ice maker harvests, so you're checking ice maker functionality, it rotates back home. So that way you're going to determine if the ice maker physically passes or fails that check. If the ice maker does not rotate, you may have a bad ice maker or you may not have voltage from your main board. After the ice maker goes through its harvest and rotates back, you will get a message on the screen that says push enter to start. At that point, both water valves are energized. Because you have a fill and a safety, you have both water valves energized to where you're going to have water flow through and fill that ice maker. Make sure your ice bucket is underneath the ice maker because it will force flood the ice maker. You should have about 3 cups of water that enter that ice bucket. It takes about 90 seconds. Once the test is done, it'll let you know to empty the ice bucket, but that's a great way to know, hey, do we have ice? Is the ice maker actually rotating? Is the ice maker sensor working? Is it receiving water? So with this one test, you can check multiple different things in the equation of ice production. If all of these things work, ice maker rotates, the sensor checks good, the water fills through the valves into the ice maker, we should have ice production as long as we're within temperature's range. So when you go into sensor readout, you're going to go into a few different things. You go into service mode, but the first part of service mode is your actual sensor readout. And this is real-time sensor readouts. It's all in Celsius. You might have to pull out Google and do some conversions, but it's a real-time sensor readout. So if you don't mind, I'm going to have Shiloh kind of switch the cameras over for me. We're going to kind of bring you guys closer so we can get a better shot inside the refrigerator so you can watch me perform a manual clean. All right, so this is a freezer column. We use this one because if you want to pan down, you have a view of the ice maker right here. On a combi unit, the ice maker is in the base of the freezer, mounted all the way up inside the ceiling of the freezer. So just for viewing sake, we decided to use a column so you guys can watch the ice maker rotate. So we're going to go up into the display in the UI, functions, swipe over your ice maker. Ice maker must be off to perform this test. So you can see there's no red box around it. If I turn this ice maker on, you can see a red box around it. This means the ice maker is on. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this back off so we can perform this test. And you can see water filter and system cleaning. System cleaning is what we're going to want to press. Manual clean, yes. Then you can pan down and watch the ice maker rotate. So you can see the bail arm checks down, ice maker harvests. If there's any ice in the ice maker at this point, it will dump it before it fills on top of the ice that's inside the ice maker and cause more of a mess. Then you have a good view of your fill tube wrapped in a 5-watt fill tube heater. It's always on, so it does not have an ice dam form inside that fill tube and prevent any kind of ice from filling. So you can see it harvests twice, and then the ice maker actually sits sideways like that. If you want to pan in there a little bit closer, you can kind of see how the ice maker is sitting sideways. This is to allow the water to trickle through the ice maker and drop into the ice bucket so it doesn't fill with one big giant sheet of ice and then have trouble kicking that ice out during the next harvest. So at this point, the user interface will say start cleaning, push enter. We'll go ahead and push enter. You might be able to hear the valves humming at this point, but you can see a little countdown. It'll let you know when it's done. So at this point, both fill and safety valves are energized, and this ice maker should have water entering and flowing through it, trickling into the ice bucket. This particular machine is not plumbed, so we do not have water flowing at this point, which, like I said, you can still hear the actual valves humming to where we should have water flowing. If for whatever reason at this point you get to a manual clean and the ice maker A does not harvest, does not rotate, there's a good chance that the ice maker may have lost communication with the electronics, and a simple hard reset will resolve it. So you're going to have to shut the machine down at the main, at the breaker, turn it back on, and then run a manual clean again. And if the ice maker communicates and rotates, it was just a loss of communication. So a simple hard reset most of the time will fix these. If the customer complains about no ice and no errors, I would definitely ask them to do a hard reset before going out on property, because if it does start making ice, then we know it was just a communication issue. So now cleaning is going to be done here in a second. Ice maker actually rotates to get any more water left in there out. Now it says empty water from ice bin, replace ice bin. I'm going to go ahead and push OK. It's going to go back to the previous menu. All right, clean complete. So now it goes back to the home menu. At this point, this is when you're going to want to open your drawer. This ice bucket should be full with about 3 cups of water. If you're a real nerd, you can take this over and ask the customer if they have a measuring cup. You can pour that in there and double check and make sure that they have good water pressure.
If you have over 4 cups of water, you have too much, and you'll have to double check your pressure coming into your fridge.
It's a great point. Thank you for that one, Shiloh. You can also change the cube size settings too, from medium to large. So if the customer does have some decent water pressure, you can drop that down to a medium cube size setting, so that way it's not going to fill with as much. Customer might have some issues where the ice is clumping together and things like that, which kind of brings me to my next point. So if you look at where the ice maker is located in this ice bucket, when the ice drops, it's going to drop towards the back of this ice bucket. Every time it dumps ice and harvests, it's going to fall into a little mountain in the back corner of that ice bucket. When the customer goes to get ice out of here, what we recommend is using your ice shovel and raking that ice forward, so that way it's a nice flat level. The bail arm has room to drop down, does not notice that mountain of ice in the back, and then does not drop ice anymore. So if you rake that ice forward and fill up the front of the bin, the unit will fill up the rest of the ice tray. It'll hold about 500 cubes on average.
And very important just to notate, this notch for the ice bin does go to the back. So if you have this fridge at home and you see the notch in the front, just go ahead and give it a quick twist.
Perfection. All right, while we're up here with the camera close up, you want to do a quick little sensor readout? Let's do it. All right, so I'm going to clean this display off. We're going to go into settings, swipe, swipe, oops. And we got service. You have a super secret passcode.
Are you sure that's super secret, Mike?
Don't tell anyone, Shiloh. So, since this is a freezer column, I'm going to kind of read this to you for a second. So, freezer column is going to be V3. V1 and V2 is not used. That's for fresh food. This is a freezer column. So, we have -2 air sensor, -12 evap sensor. BG is your condenser, and J26 ice maker is -1 degree Celsius. So this is a great tool, a great resource for us technicians to know what's really going on inside that machine, real-time temperature sensor. So if the ice maker sensor was way out of range or reading -40, we know that -40 is an open sensor. It's just a bad sensor right off the bat. So going back to the V1, V2, see how it says -40? Again, this is a freezer column. You do not have an air and evap sensor on this freezer column, so it's reading -40, an open sensor. So if you're in the field and you're on a combi unit that has a fridge and a freezer, and you see -40 in one of those places, that's a bad sensor. All right.
Show them that they can go home.
So at this point, if you push enter, you're actually going into the service mode. If you push back or the home button, it will take you back at the menu or back to the sub menu that you were previously in. So to get into actual service mode, same idea. You're going to go past your super secret code. Again, don't tell anyone, Shiloh. Here's your sensor readouts, but you push enter. Now your actual service mode test is starting. The first two parts of this test are your compressors. Since this is a freezer column, we only have one compressor that's going to run, so I'm going to push OK. V1, V2, that's your fresh food compressor that will not run on this model. It is a column. V3 compressor. So if you wanted to diagnose this compressor, customer complained no cool on this machine, you can take your meter out and put it into the frequency wire, your DC voltage wire, onto your inverter and check for hertz, for frequency at this point. And then you can watch your meter reading frequency rise at this point because it's a VCC compressor. And the higher it goes, the faster the compressor is going to run. There's a few other things that I would go through service mode for. Manual clean will tell you everything you need to know about your ice production and water flow throughout the machine. But service mode will get you to your fans, your heaters, and to a couple other things that you're going to want to check, like your compressors, because it's a longer service mode. There's a lot of legacy features like RGB. We do not have RGB lighting in our refrigerators. So you're going to be pushing the button OK a little bit more than you necessarily want to. But V3 heater, this is something that we would use. V3 is a freezer column, and this is the defrost heater. You would physically check for voltage to your heater, or you can check your heater for continuity. You can actually hear it start to pop right now. It's starting to kind of get hot inside of there. V3 fan, fresh food fan, your freezer fan. You might be able to hear that ramp up. So like I said, there's multiple legacy features in here that you're going to flow through, but fans, heaters, and compressors are going to be your big ones that you're actually going to go into service mode for. V3 ice maker heater is your fill tube heater. This does not have a switching valve. It's a freezer column. You can check each valve independently. Manual clean will open them both together so you get water flow. V1 heater is not used as a freezer column. V2 heater is not used as a freezer column. -40 because it does not exist. V2 is a fridge. Same idea there. So ice maker level, ice maker cycle. If you want to pan down, this will rotate and harvest the ice maker independently. It will not fill with water. It is just going to harvest and rotate the ice maker. Once again, it will not fill with water during this part of the test. It just rotates the ice maker. It goes through a complete harvest. Once it's done harvesting, the display on the UI will say ice level low, and then you push OK to advance through to the next step. If you do not push OK in a timely manner, the ice maker will go through another harvest cycle. You could get stuck in a little loop here at this ice maker if your customer is a chatty Cathy and you're talking to them while you're checking the ice maker. Just make sure you push OK when it says ice level low so you're not standing there for another couple minutes watching the ice maker rotate. They are flex tray ice makers. There's no heater involved inside of there. And quote unquote, they're dumb ice makers. They only do what they're told to do. There's a sensor and a motor. Everything is done by the main electronic control. So at this point it says ice level low. We'll push OK so we can advance on. Ice maker NTC. This is a great one. It's telling you real-time sensor readout of your ice maker sensor. Here's your condenser, 25 degrees Celsius. Water valves 1 and 2. More legacy features. Water dispenser is not on this machine. NTC's on the V1 is fresh food. This is a freezer column. We also have humidity sensors. We should have a V3 NTC evap. V3 NTC air. And this is the end of the test. Once the test is complete, it'll give you some software and user information. That's a good thing to take a picture of. There's a good chance that one of us in tech support might request that information at one point to see what software version or firmware that the machine is running. Then once done, it'll go through an initial test just to kind of make sure all the low voltage things ramp back up, your lights and fans and all your DC voltage components start to communicate properly. All right, so that was a once over on a manual clean on the Fulgor Milano ice makers. All right, so any questions in the chat so far? I'm just going to keep running through.
No questions as of yet, but one that I had for you, Mike, how often should I be resetting my filter if it has one?
That is actually a great question. So it has a 180-day countdown. The water filter manifold automatically bypasses in the combi units and the refrigerator columns. The freezer columns do not have a filter installed internally. So that was a great question. 180-day life cycle. You do need to reset the filter. You can also tell the machine that it does not have a filter installed. If you have a whole home water filtration system or an RO system, you can eliminate that update to let you know that it's time to replace that filter if you're not using a filter. Once again, all you do is remove the filter, spring-loaded manifold, it will automatically bypass. We have another version of a column is the FM4 BM units. Those are 130-day countdown on their filters. So let's go ahead and talk about the TSB on the tri-mode section for the combi units. I'm going to close this and get a little cold in the freezer. The TSB, it goes into detail on placement of the the freezer evap sensor and the change of the sensor itself. So the original sensor was a white plastic bulb mounts inside the upper section of the evaporator on the right-hand side. What they've changed was now we have a metal bulb on the NTC sensor, and they relocated it to the upper left portion of the evaporator. So I think Shell's working on getting the live stream for you guys up on the view there, so you can see on the screen there, you have a full-on ice pattern on the bottom of the evap, on the evap cover. So if a technician puts his phone on a video record, sets it down on that tray and slides it in there, he's going to get a good view of the bottom side of that freezer ceiling and you'll see the halo of ice around it. So once you get in there and you see you've got a halo of ice, but the center of it is free and clear because it's going through defrost, that sensor being in the incorrect place is what's causing that the incomplete defrost. When we have incomplete defrost, then the air can't flow through properly. Now the ice maker is not at temperature to produce ice. So there's a few things that we need to do. So there's the image right there of the bottom panel of the inside of the freezer section. If you guys put your phone on record instead of sticking your head inside of there, sometimes there's not a lot of room in there with all the product that they have, but you'll see the center is nice and clear, but the surrounding edges are frosted up. So here's the sensor placement. The new placement is going to be on the top left of the evaporator. They want you to do it nicely. Use a nice little zip tie it in place so that way it doesn't move. It's going to build ice on that evaporator, and when it builds ice, it's going to move that sensor around. So make sure you zip tie it in place so that way it always reads the correct temperature. We need the precise temperature in that placement so that way that sensor reads good, so that way it goes through a proper and long enough defrost so we don't have too much ice built up after the defrost cycle is complete. If you guys have questions on this process when you're in the field, do not hesitate to call our tech support, 877-383-7787. All of our team members here are happy to walk you guys through this, send you a copy of the service bulletin. We even have videos that we can send you guys as well. So this tech bulletin is one of the new ones. This has to do with fluctuations of temperatures and also ice production. So this is kind of an oddball situation. So they share a condenser, two different evaporators, two compressors. The fact that they share a condenser means if one section is struggling, like if that freezer section is struggling with the defrost, it's going to take a lot of the place of the condenser, and then the condenser is going to get too warm, and then it's going to cause issues with the fresh food section. So we just need to make sure that if you guys notice temperature fluctuations in fresh food or freezer, or the customer's got intermittent ice production and it's no errors, just no ice, no errors, just intermittent temperatures and intermittent ice production, it probably has to do with this TSB. There's the part number for the TS or for the new temperature sensor on the TSB itself. I don't know if you guys had the opportunity to see that when Shaw was going through it, but we'll make sure that you guys have access to that new part number as well.
And I'm just going to jump in really quick to go back to that page with the part number. I will read it off, but I'll leave this up for a few seconds. But Bravo 0514-2300. So if you are in the chat, you can jot that down so that you have it. But I'll leave this page up for a little bit.
And it's the same Molex connector, it's just a different style NTC. You can see the difference. One's metal, one's plastic. That way we have less of an issue where the unit does not go through a proper defrost and then have issues with airflow. And when we have a lack of airflow, then the unit's not going to cool properly. And the first thing that's going to do is the machine's not going to make ice. And that's going to be the customer's complaint. They're going to call us, let us know that they're not making any ice and that the temperatures have been a little wonky. Sometimes they'll hit 45, sometimes they'll hit 38, but it's never a consistent temperature. When you guys run into those things, give us a call, check out that technical service bulletin, log on to the Fulgor Milano's reserve site. The technical service bulletin is on there as well. That way we can all take care of these customers. So one final thing that I wanted to talk about was removing the ice maker. So if you guys noticed when we had you guys close by inside the freezer there's a bracket that the ice maker actually mounts to. The ice maker always mounts to a bracket, whether it's in a freezer column or in a combi unit. So never take the ice maker off the bracket, take the bracket off of the refrigerator. Keep the bracket on the ice maker, swap it to your new ice maker when you have your new ice maker if you ever have to replace one. But real quick on the ice maker, if your ice maker rotates during service checks, the temperature sensor checks good. There is no need to replace this ice maker. Again, for lack of better words, it's a dumb ice maker. It has a mechanical motor and a sensor. It only does what it's told to do. So if it physically rotates and the sensor is reading a proper value, there's no need to replace the ice maker. But again, going back to the ice maker installation, when you guys replace these in the combi units, they're in the freezer so you're kind of laying on the floor, and this is located in the upper left-hand corner of the freezer. So that bracket mounted on the side here gets screwed into the ceiling and to the sidewall. Where these wires plug into on that sidewall there's a good chance that you might have some harnesses hanging out over top of that metal bracket. If that's the case, put your hand up there and push them out of the way, so that way you have sealing and ice maker and you're not pinching the wires between that metal bracket and your sealing. It has happened. I've been on the phone with technicians before, so just make sure, be a little careful, push your wiring out of the way, and then zip your ice maker and mount it. It's one of the easiest ways I found to do it. Both water valves are very accessible too. You can get to them right from the front. Most repairs on this machine, unless you're running a heat exchanger, this all can be done right from the front. There's really no repairs that need to be to where you need to remove this full product to do, down to your water valves. Down below the toe kick, you have access. There's a bracket that these both mount to. You can take that bracket off and have access to both water valves right from the front.
You want to go in with the handheld? We'll show them that bracket really quick.
Let's do it. All right, so here's our bracket we were talking about. Ice maker mounts to the bracket on the bottom side and on the top side, and you can see where it mounts to the wall there. And then you can see on the back side, the Molex is in a very similar place on the combi units. So just make sure that all of your wires are pushed behind your bracket, so that way your bracket doesn't pinch any of those wires when you mount your ice maker. So let's recap real quick. Customer complaint: no ice, no errors. Just notice that she's been using ice and now she's got about a quarter of the ice in that bucket than she's used to, but she doesn't have any error codes. Since she has no ice, no error codes, but notice the lack in ice production, we can do a few different things. First, right off the rip, we can ask them to do a quick hard reset and see how it acts in 24 hours, but that's not giving us a real-time answer. If the customer is willing, oftentimes our team here triages quite heavily with customers. So if they're willing and able, we'll have them push a couple buttons like we did, enter the super secret code, get the customer to laugh a little bit, watch the ice maker rotate, hear the ice maker fill with water, and realize, hey, there's not a problem here whatsoever. It was just a lack of communication. Everything is working great. So when you guys have those instances, 8 no water in error codes, you must clear those error codes after you do a repair. So 8 no water in, you have to go into your settings, default settings, or else it will recall that error code. So for example, let's say the ice maker truly was not filling and had a bad water valve, and it was giving you an 8 no water in error code. You replace the water valve, you tested it, everything was working great, you leave the customer's home, you're high and mighty, you just repaired that product. Customer will call back within the next 48 hours and let us know that they have that error code pop back up again because it recalled it from the actual memory. You need to go through and go into the settings and default settings. When you do this, you need to remember that all of the defaults will go back to defaults. Cube size will be large, the temperatures in the fridge will be 41, in the freezer will be 0, and the freezer will be a freezer. So you can actually set some of the combi unit, or some of our units like the combi units, from the freezer to a fridge to a fresco cooler. So if your customer has sodas or juices or something in there and you're using it as a refrigerator, if you default settings, it will go back to a freezer and then it will freeze those items. So just a quick once over on the product before you start doing anything, to kind of get an idea of where it's at and how it's set before you default them, will be your best bet to help that customer out the best you can.
Awesome. Still no questions from the chat. We'll leave it open for a couple more minutes here just to see if anybody pops in. But
this is going to be a monthly thing that we do. This is our new podcast, Peak Performance, brought to you by Pinnacle Appliance Support. Shella and myself will be doing these monthly. It's not going to be on the same day monthly, but we have newsletters coming out that will let you guys know when our new Tech Talks are going to happen. We want to make sure that we're in front of you guys as much as possible with some of these products and some of the things that we see in the field and that we hear from you guys in the field, so that way we can best assist everybody involved.
And we might have some guest techs every now and then, or guest speakers. We'll bring in the after sales department as well to occasionally be on here so you can meet the team as well.
Yeah.
So we'd love for you guys to join in, ask questions, and get to know the team.
Yeah, we also have another podcast that Pinnacle does. Our ventilation expert, Jessie Jeanette. I think I'm going to have her as one of my, what's the word I'm looking for?
Co-hosts.
Co-hosts on the show. There you go. Thank you. My second half of my brain over there. So these are big things. This is going to be a fun time. I want some more interaction with the field, so that way we can have some big Q&As during these sessions.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to close the session for today. Thank you again for attending Pinnacle's podcast, Peak Performance by Pinnacle Appliance Support. My name is Mike Langen, Shiloh Verbeek. You guys have a great day.
Thanks so much, guys.